Deputy Barry Ward.
Gormagad the ceann córa I dús póir ní féidir in a rá cé go tábhachtach agus an tá an ábhar seo agus an luach a bhaineann le policy éifeachtach an seo a chnéad. The importance of diverting young people away from crime cannot be overstated. It's a hugely important thing, and the underlying principle has to be that prevention is better than cure. Because although it doesn't mean that people are beyond the scope of policies, if they have been involved in criminality, the reality is that it is increasingly difficult to undo the damage of being involved in certain criminality once it's happened. And we are much better off in investing in programmes that save people from ever going down that road or ever finding themselves in that road, in that situation. So the value of diversion cannot be overstated. The 8,404 young people who were in the Garda Youth Diversion Programme in 2022, for example, they've benefited from that. It's impossible to say how effective that programme has been, and we don't know how many other young people didn't get into that programme and didn't benefit from it. But it is something that yields dividends tenfold if it's effective. And I come from a background of criminal law and defending young people, indeed, who've been involved in criminality or are accused of being involved in criminality. So I've seen these people up front and personal. I've heard their stories, and I understand the circumstances that have brought about that involvement. It's very rarely accidental, to be perfectly honest, and you can see in the map of those who have become involved in criminality, if you superimpose another map of disadvantage, it's very clear why it happens. And not providing young people with the opportunity and the options to get out of that is part of the problem here. The evidence of where you come from and linking that to criminality is very, very clear. It's not necessarily something that is geographically defined, although there are definitely concentrations, and I know myself, in terms of the people I've represented, there are certain areas, particularly of Dublin, that are overrepresented there, and that doesn't reflect on the people who live in those areas. It does reflect on the investment in those communities, the options that are available for people who grew up in those communities. But even in my own area, and I've raised this issue in here before, I live in Huddy Park in Dunleary. It is a lovely place to live, but we have had issues there in the local area with young people who don't have alternative options, who don't have facilities to entertain them, sports facilities. One of the greatest pressures on Dunleary right down at the moment is playing pitches for the many, many sports clubs that want to provide facilities for kids in exactly this boat to do things other than the things that they might end up getting involved in otherwise. So there are a couple of approaches that we need to take to this. Undoubtedly, we need to look at where there are problems and focus our efforts there. But as a general rule, we need to be investing in community facilities, sports facilities particularly, to give options to young people to do other things. But we also need to be giving the Gardaí the confidence and the power to deal with issues when they do arise. And one of the issues that people raise with me all the time in Dunleary, particularly in the context, for example, of antisocial behaviour, which is the thin end of the wedge of youth criminal activity, is encouraging Gardaí not to take the view, well, they're children, therefore nothing can be done. We should certainly be looking as well at parental responsibility, something we don't focus on enough, because children are not, they don't get involved in criminality off their own bat. It's something that happens because of a series of failures at societal, community and family level, no doubt about it. Parents need to take responsibility for their children. That is very much clear. But I know myself, speaking to Gardaí in my area, that they feel if they come across a situation where young people are involved in whatever it might be, that they can't intervene, or that if they do intervene, the court system won't deal with those people in an effective way. And we know, in fact, that in terms of young people who have involved themselves in crime and ultimately paid the price of being imprisoned, that the most recent figures, which I think are from 2024, show that 84% of young adults under 21 re-offended within 3 years. That's an absolutely appalling recidivism rate. And unfortunately, it reflects poorly on us in this House and us in this society. And we have to deal with that. Many years ago, when I worked in this House as an advisor, I visited a young offenders institution in Cheshire in England, which had reduced that recidivism rate for young people to 16%. It had done it by bringing them into a very expensive prison system that gave them the freedom to operate within. They could walk away at any time, knowing that if they did, they would not be allowed back. But while in there, they had to take responsibility for their own conduct, making their beds, keeping their rooms clean, getting up early in the morning, getting their breakfast, getting in and learning a trade and being involved in a programme that resulted in a particular outcome. That's the kind of thing we need to invest in. But let's be real, it's not cheap. And if we want to reap the dividends that come with diverting young people away from criminality, we also have to be prepared to pay the financial cost of that, because it is expensive, and investment in young people is expensive. But the whole idea is that in a generation's time, we reap the dividends of people who understand, young people who understand that crime is not the only option. And we can therefore compete with those on the streets who seek to draw them into criminality, tell them that they can make easy money, or they can get whatever it might be, jackets or runners or other physical goods that are going to somehow compensate the damage it's going to do to their later life. Let's make sure that they're equipped with the proper utensils to make the decision they have to make, to be on a path that results in a positive, constructive approach to society. And that's what we want for all of our young people. But as I say, we in this House have to be willing to invest in the products that are going to bring about those dividends, invest in the policies that are going to ensure that young people actually have options when they go out of their homes and away from their families, that they're not drawn into attractive alternatives, but that they actually avail of opportunities that will bring them into a fruitful adulthood, one that we can all be proud of.
Thank you, Deputy.